What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and this is some Red Orchestra 2 on Spartan Novka using the German machine gunner class, because it's probably my second favorite class right after the standard rifleman. But I'm going to be talking about the machine gunner class in general. Obviously, the machine gunner class is a limited slot class, meaning that basically I believe in classic and realism mode that there are 4 machine gunner slots per team per map. It might vary slightly, but usually it seems like there's about 4 of them. So there's not too terribly many, but it's not nearly as hard to get as a marksman class. Now, of course, being a machine gunner and being Red Orchestra 2, being a more realistic game, it isn't simply, hey, I just have a belt-fed assault rifle that can kill everybody and I can just lay on the trigger for days. It is much more about positioning and holding down an area. You see the area that I'm in right now. It is a very exposed position, and I know that. However, if I can go ahead and get into this position and basically keep myself alive long enough that I have cleared out, what can shoot at me at the time, and then they have to respawn and bring in their second wave of attackers, I am in an amazing position. This is truly an amazing position if you can clear out that first one, if you can get in there and not get instantly killed, which is, very often easier said than done. So basically, machine gunner class, going forward, it's positioning. Everything is about positioning. It's not a run and gun class. Even though a lot of people say, oh, MG34 guys can clear out rooms better than some machine gun guys. It's just purely relying on hip fire, and that can and can't work, and that's a whole nother can of worms, which I'll probably get into later in this video. But the 2 machine guns featured in Red Orchestra 2 is, of course, the MG34, which you see on screen, which is basically the predecessor to the MG42, which hopefully will end up coming into Red Orchestra 2 at some point, as that is definitely a gun that was on its way and probably made it to Stalingrad, but may or may not have actually been used in any numbers. But going forward, for custom map makers, the MG42 obviously much widely used in the later war years, which adding that in by default would be a great thing. But as well as the DP28, the double penetrator 28th edition, the had another funny name for it. It's the pizza gun. Everybody knows that gun is the pizza gun, the frisbee gun, the disc shooter. You have a funny name for it. That gun, I can't take it seriously, but it's a great gun in this game. It's just not the MG34, which, of course, if you know me and my battlefield approach, you definitely know I like the MG3, which is developed off of the MG42, which, as I understand, is largely developed off the MG34, which means that, yeah, this gun is definitely beastly. Comparing the 2 guns, the MG34 is probably the better of the machine guns. However, with the DP28, it does have the ability to see how many rounds are left in the magazine, or disc, whatever you want to call it. I guess they're technically magazines, but it just seems goofy because they're so radically different than anything else. Basically, if you look on top of the magazine, which is obviously on top of the gun on the DP28, there's this little clip, and you'll see it rotate around. Basically, where that clip is can show you how many rounds you have left in the magazine. When it basically, I believe it gets to back right in front of your face, essentially. That's essentially when you are out of ammo. Whereas with the MG34, it's definitely a guessing game because, of course, with a higher rate of fire machine gun, it becomes very difficult to tell how many bullets you fired. So what I would strongly suggest you get in the habit of doing is when you reload, or when you get ready to reload, look for an area where the enemy is likely to be coming through and just dump off the drum. Just get rid of it. That way it's not sitting in your inventory, so when you basically end up running out of drums, you put that back on and you just reloaded a drum that has 10 bullets in it. Which I guess is better than none, but at the same time I would rather have no magazine and use my pistol rather than thinking I have ammunition in my gun, or not knowing how much ammunition I have, because obviously that's never a good thing. One thing to recognize with the MG34 specifically is its iron sights are automatically, and this is the lowest that they will go, set for 300 meters. So basically, when you are shooting at 300 meters, you aim right at them. When you're shooting anything closer, which is pretty much everything in this game, because at 300 meters you ain't gonna see anything, especially in Classic. But the MG still do have zoom, but so I guess it doesn't matter if you're playing a Classic. But it's just really hard to see at that range. Pretty much the only time you'll see that type of range is Pavlov's house if you have a guy running around stupidly on the Russian side when you're using the MG34. So just remember that to always shoot lower. Essentially, if you want to shoot a guy in the face, aim at their chest, their midsection, and you'll get a headshot. Just definitely get used to it. It really makes shooting at mid-range much more difficult. I do believe the DP28, I don't use that gun too terribly much, just because I don't necessarily like it. Personally, it's not because it's a bad gun or ineffective, I just don't care for it. I do believe that gun is sighted in for 200 meters, if I remember correctly, which isn't nearly as much of an issue. It seems like between 200 and 300 meters is when the bullet drop seems to be a little bit more effective. There's a bigger difference between 200 to 300 than there is from 100 to 200, but not nearly as much as a problem as it is on the MG34, where it only has the 300 meter setting and above. So definitely recognize that. That will definitely change the way you have to use this gun. As for machine gun tactics, as I mentioned earlier, it is all about positioning. That is absolutely crucial. These are World War II machine guns. These are not, the squad automatics, that they have nowadays, where basically it's a belt-fed machine gun that's lightweight, that, is easily man-portable. I should say relatively easily man-portable. Obviously, I'm pretty sure running around with the 249 is a little bit easier than running around with an MG34. I'm pretty sure most soldiers nowadays would definitely agree with that. But so don't think that you should be running around with these things, because you shouldn't. It just doesn't work well. To actually use your iron sights, you have to deploy your bipod. Essentially, you need supported firing. You won't see me do it in this game at all, but there is hip firing from the hip. Of course, in Red Orchestra 2, the bullets are pretty much realistically accurate from the hip out of your muzzle. It's not like hip fire in most games, as opposed, although in action mode, it does work more normal to other games. However, in Realism and Classic, it's not quite that simple. Hip fire from a machine gun, it works at close range if you need to, but I would not suggest it personally, because that's just asking for trouble if you're relying on that. But you see right here, I'm in a pretty good position, or was in a pretty good position. We're capturing this area. We had taken it, then we had lost it, then we had taken it. On this map, I just know that the Russian spawns are basically right towards us. I'm looking. Call it cheap, call it annoying, call it douchey, whatever it is. I mean, that's where the enemy's coming from. It's their job to eliminate me. They're not literally spawning in front of me, so it's fair game, but in my opinion. Just basically know where the enemy is coming from and set yourself up in a position where you are harder to hit than they are. I mean, you saw those two guys right there just running around. I had an open shot, full frontal, not going to miss them, as opposed to me where I'm proned out and deployed and everything and all fine and dandy. And you see right there trying to move up, being a little bit too aggressive, but I figured we could probably get another guy up there into the cap zone. But in terms of suppression, though, of course, Red Orchestra 2 does have a built-in suppression mechanic. It's completely unlike Battlefield 3's suppression mechanic. If you're newer to the game, it doesn't make your gun suddenly inaccurate or anything goofy like that. Personally, I don't find myself firing for suppression too terribly much, except for in certain situations like where I'm at right about now, conveniently enough. In this map, this building, if you're playing from the German side, will absolutely tear you to shreds. There's always guys up there, especially MG guys. They like to really, pop up on these little windows and just rain death upon anything that's nearly in the middle of the street. You have a great field of fire from there, and it's, pretty well defended position with the concrete building. But that said, it is pretty obvious, which means it probably won't let you have a long lifespan, which is another thing that's pretty crucial with the machine gunner class, given that it is so powerful and so important, because it does have such amazing area control, possibilities, because pretty much anything that's running in my area is going to die. It's very important that as an MG player, rather than like a rifleman, you're much more conservative and you're dying less, because you need that MG out in the field. If you lose a rifleman, you lost a rifleman. It's not that big of a deal. Whereas if you lose an MG guy in a crucial position, that can be a changer, because obviously, 50 rounds of fully automatic fire versus 5 rifle rounds from bolt action. The guy firing 1 round a second, I know which one I'd rather have on my side. So basically, the MG class is balancing aggression, which you do of course need. You shouldn't just sit there in the back, because usually that's where everyone expects the MGs to be, and that's basically making yourself an easy target, because of the fact that you do have to deploy out, and set up when you're using one of these MGs. Plus, it makes it harder to hit the target, obviously, when you're at longer range, and you can't shoot through dead bodies in this game. Just thought I'd mention that, because there was a guy back around that pillar I was shooting at. But so you have to be aggressively moving up, but you also have to know when to stop. Because of the fact that this class plays out like that, where you really do have to move when you can move, and not move when you can't move, and you have to be able to basically hit the deck and take a position and make your position. It's not one of the easier classes to play. Don't think just because, oh hey, it's a fully automatic gun with magazines and everything, and I can just hit targets. Yes, you'll be able to hit targets, and you'll be able to kill targets, rack up a body count, but on the same time, you're not going to be an effective machine gunner. You'll just be a guy with a machine gun. There's a difference. I mean, you see right here, once again, the area control. I'm not in the cap zone myself for the objective that we're attacking, but I'm essentially controlling these 2 alleyways. I got this left flank, basically locked down, from the areas I can see, and there's a pretty steady amount of enemies coming through. So, while I'm not in supreme cover or anything, it's still a good position because I am prone, I am down low, I am a very hard target to hit, especially when I start shooting at people, which, on screen when I'm playing, it's much easier to see targets than it will be in this video. Yes, the rifleman could get crafty and pop out around the corner just ever so slightly, but in general that's not going to happen, and usually you'll see them before they see you and shoot you. So keep your eyes peeled, definitely, because again, you don't want to die as a machine gunner. I mean, this class is just that important. So that's pretty much that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I'll take requests if you guys would like to see me talk about another class. I should probably do a rifleman video next, because obviously the rifleman is the class that you'll be playing most. But also, as a machine gunner, you should probably suppress other machine guns and know where they are. Obviously, think like a machine gunner on the other side and where you would post up and everything. And just pay attention to where a machine gun would go from the enemy team, and try and make sure that position is always covered to protect your friendlies. Because as you saw there was a guy getting ready to pop in that window. He probably would have mowed down a couple of guys at least before he got shot himself, which he probably would, given that he's in that window and we are closer now. But just pretty simple stuff. It's just a much more conservative and much more position-oriented class than a rifleman. But in the right hands, if you play it well, if you have a good game with it, it can excel. It can be a game changer. So, bye.